Thank you. I'll get started. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. It is August 2nd, 2023, 6:30 p.m. To all persons deemed interested or affected by the Town of Barnstable's Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission ordinance under Chapter 112, Article 3 of the Code of the Town of Barnstable, you are hereby notified that a hearing is being held at Town Hall, 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. Selectmen's Conference Room, second floor, 6:30 p.m., Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 and in accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, subsection 20. Anyone taping this meeting to please make their presence known. Please silence your cell phones if you can. Please put them on vibrate, whatever it is you do. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Commissioner Matthews.
Here.
Commissioner Cawley let us know he would not be able to make it. Commissioner Jennifer Hinckley Needham.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Cronin also let us know that she would not be unable to make it. Commissioner Doherty?
Here.
Commissioner Kay?
Here.
And I, Cheryl Powell, am also here. So welcome to everyone. We've done the roll call. It's been called to order. We do not have new members. Advisors, I'll recognize them when they come in. So, since the trainings, I received a message today that it's now time to renew the conflict of interest training. You can do that online if anyone needs help. That Jen and Matt, I know it's your first, and Kevin, I think it's your first time. If you want to contact the town, they can help you with that. Cynthia Lovell can help you do that with you, or you can always call me.
You have been getting them, they've been trickling in.
Okay. When is the due date?
I don't know.
August 29th.
Oh, August 29th? Thank you. So I'll do mine on the weekend. So, nothing on awards tonight, nothing on correspondence. So we do have one of our applicants. I'm going to jump around a little bit. This is minor modification. Mr. Wayne Kirker, welcome back. With regard to 77 Pleasant Street, Hyannis, map 327, parcel 118, with regard to a chimney removal. If you want to come up this way,
sure.
Sign in, please. Yeah, that's right as well. I don't bite, I promise.
Hi, the Wayne Kirker, trustee of the property at 77 Pleasant, which has a quite historic house on it, and that this board was kind enough to allow me to move the house, and I have, and now we're actually working on it. We've started with just in the last few weeks. My contractor's time came, and he came in, and we've done the windows, and we're doing windows presently, I should say, and exact same placement and same appearance and everything. And we're planning on doing that throughout. But the chimney, I think you have a letter from our engineer who's forbid me to try to keep it in place, because I spent a fortune reinforcing the second floor, the attic roof, let's call it, the joists there, so that it would take the weight. And he said, yeah, it's great, except it's not going to pass code, and you can't trust the chimney. It's something about the makeup of the bricks crumbles. If you hit them with a hammer, they turn into powder. He says you just can't have it. So I got an engineer's opinion, and we sent it in, and we took pictures of the chimney and sent that in, and I got a series of pictures of the whole house, so nobody will forget how this is supposed to come out when I'm all done. And we dimensioned the chimney, and I'm hoping to just build a what's it called?
Faux chimney? Faux chimney?
Yeah, what's it called? A false chimney, sure. Yeah. I'm hoping just you'll bless the idea of doing that so that I can tell the guy that's building the house, let's build a chimney with the finished dimensions have to be the same, and the material has to look exactly like it has always looked. And that's really the end of that. That's why I'm here.
So just to get, Wow, I feel old. I'm the only commissioner left that was here when we actually agreed to that.
Yeah.
Wayne came back to us, I believe, 3 times.
Yes.
And he worked with us, and we all know that sometimes people just can be insistent or whatever, but Mr. Kirker tried quite hard. And we came to an agreement that move the house, but if the house was destroyed in the process of moving it, then a replica would be made of it, and to use the same materials, for instance, bricks and that. However, I think I'm going to read into the record this letter that you mentioned, if that's okay. I know I've done it one other time, but I'm going to do it now as well. It's from Ted Greenlaw, P.E., Rockland, Mass., March 13th, 2023, to whom it may concern. Pursuant to my inspection of the chimney at 77 Pleasant Street on March 13th, 2023, I deem this chimney condemned. It is unstable and presents a life and safety issue. And whereas some of the bricks crumbled when disrupted, they cannot be reused. The framing of the house will not support a standard chimney by modern standards. This chimney should be removed and a replacement chimney installed, one that will be structurally sound. Regards, Ted Greenlaw, P.E., copy to Wayne Kirker. Do you have anything else you wanted to say to us?
No, that's really it, other than when I came, of course, I asked the board, can I just take this house down and build a replica and save a fortune? Probably could have built 2 houses when you figure it all out, but the board wanted that house saved, and then we wrote in the agreement even that if, as we were moving up the hill, it didn't make the move, then I would build a replica. But it made the move. Mm-hmm. Everything is working out, and it'll be very attractive when we're finished.
So, are there any questions on the presentation from the commissioners?
Not at all, just one. Was this a chimney in the original to a fireplace, or?
Excuse me?
Was this to a fireplace, this chimney? Or?
Yeah, there was a fireplace, but it wasn't under the chimney. It came down and hung one way and hung the other, and the whole fireplace fell through the floor with the with the chimney up to that point. And
I have no other questions.
So when we moved the house, we then gobbled up all the bricks with tobacco and cleaned them out of there. So it did have a fireplace, but it's not going to. It's just going to be it's just going to look the same from the outside.
Plus, this picture that you sent, Mr. Kirker has, I mean, you can tell it's closed up on top anyway, so the fireplace wasn't being used.
Right.
Yeah. So if it's all right, I'm going to open it for public comment. Anyone for public comment? I'll leave public comment open until we go to the motions. Commissioners, I always try to leave my opinions till last. Any comments?
No.
As I said, Mr. Kirker has worked with us. He hasn't always liked what we said, I think, but he's definitely worked with us. And I think my personal opinion is he's made an admirable effort on it. But if one of the commissioners, I'm going to close public comment now. If a commissioner, actually first staff, any staff comments?
Just that any decision rendered would be a modification of the 2019 decision, condition 7, for the chimney to be a faux chimney or a false chimney, as opposed to the existing.
Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion with regard to this particular application? And whichever way you're making the motion, to please reference the 2019 certificate and condition 7.
I move that the commission, that this is, did they change this thing here?
There's a fresh one up here if you want one, I'm sure.
Hold on, I'll read mine. I move that the commission find the application to be compatible with the preservation and protection of the district at 77 Pleasant Street with the
2019, with regard to the 2019 certificate that was granted, and item conditions number 7, And I'd probably also say whether you're making the motion to to approve what as presented tonight or not.
I second.
Second that.
Okay. In that case, let's go for the findings. So I am going to go up for the ones that we have. Commissioner Matthews.
Yes.
Commissioner Hinckley Needham.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty.
Yes.
Commissioner Kay.
Aye.
I also say aye. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion for the certificate of appropriateness, please?
I'll make that motion. I move to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at the address of 77 Pleasant Street, Hyannis, map 327, parcel 118, and the submitted material.
And with regard to the 2019 approval for the certificate on condition 7 for an amendment, as per the finding motion. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. Seconded by Commissioner Doherty?
Yep.
All right, Commissioner Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Hinckley Needham.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty.
Aye.
Commissioner Kay.
Aye.
I also say aye. Thank you for coming back to us.
Thank you for having me.
It will look exactly the same as the other, but not falling down.
That's right. It's going to be straighter. This one began to lean over. That's what got our attention. So,
You don't have to put it up leaning.
Yeah, right. No, we're gonna-
that's
we're gonna
good.
put it
yeah.
up
Yeah, that's
plumb.
good. I like that. We're not in Pisa.
Yeah, no, you don't. It doesn't have to lean.
Yeah, exactly. Good to see you.
Bye. Have a good evening, Wayne. All right. So we have not had our other applicant come in. So in that case, I am going to turn it over to Downtown Hyannis Design Guidelines. If you'd like to come up, sign in, and introduce yourself, please.
Might also sit in the middle. That's okay. Thanks for having me. I think I know many of you because you were on the committee to help to do this work. And I think the goal of tonight's meeting is to get your continuing comments on the draft regulations and guidelines. I think Jim and the staff is hoping that you're not approving the final document tonight, but you're endorsing that it's 95% of the way there, headed in the right direction in terms of the structure, the content, the level of detail. And I've got my notebook here for additional comments that come up too. So that's the plan. And I think the presentation I'm going to show will cover some of the same issues that the committee's seen, but I think for people that have been less involved with the detail of this, it'll help set the context.
And real quick, just if I may add, so just so this commission knows, the planning board has also played a similar role throughout this process, and Monday night they offered a similar level of support, with the next step being that we're going to put it out to the general public for their comments, and then ultimately bring it back to you all for hopefully formal adoption at that point.
And I think the plan procedurally is to, any comments you have this evening, record them, but wait to make all of the edits after we get the public comments too, to keep the resource flow, the cost value of our consulting efficient. So I think we've done some work. As the agenda is, I want to talk about what are regulations and what are guidelines, based on some feedback from some of you, actually. I want to remind everybody again that this flows out of the zoning, that it's meant as a companion piece to the zoning. So if you're a builder, a developer, an architect, you go to the zoning first, and then you go to the guidelines, and then you know what to do in a way that's coordinated, which I think will be useful. Also, coordination between this body and the planning board. That was one of the goals of it. I'll talk a little bit about I'm not going to go through all the guidelines. That would be a very long presentation, but just hit some highlights, and then we can get into the document itself. So I mentioned this already, but maybe I've gotten ahead of myself. But the guidelines are meant to regulations on the zoning is there, and we put a lot of dimensional standards in the zoning that really deal with more building form more than typical zoning. So it's already a kind of form-based code, but the town had us back because we were the consultants for that project to think through what additional things the town would like to communicate to people building on private property. This is really geared to kind of action on private property that would take the zoning further to get the best possible kind of design proposals, even at the staff level, even before developers and builders submit more formally. So that really good projects show up from the get-go in town hall here. And so we thought about it as much as architects might think about it as planners in terms of designing them. The thing that we've developed maybe since the last time the whole commission has seen the work is to separate out regulations versus guidelines. Regulations are requirements that a project proponent has to do unless they get a waiver from you. Is this true, or is this only a planning board thing? It's true for both boards, okay, bodies. And so they would have to make a case, but it would also mean that almost all projects will include things that we include as regulations. Guidelines are legally more discretionary, but we think we've used language that still makes it clear these are the expectations of the commission. But the regulations and guidelines have slightly different legal implications. And I think I've gone through these other things too. Throughout the process, and I've adjusted this graphic a little bit, we designed the guidelines by working from the zoning kind of out. So we looked at those categories of dimensional standards during the zoning and then said, which is the column on the left, and then said, what particular architectural details do we want to drill into that would provide more detail? I've already said that a couple of times. And then which things aren't in the zoning at all, like cladding material, questions about trim and molding, color, retail frontage issues should be in the guidelines. And so this was also helpful because we used the categories of issues in the zoning, which are building considerations, parking lot considerations, and sited landscape considerations to also frame and organize the structure of the regulations and the guidelines. Where the design regulations and guidelines apply, they apply jurisdictionally for the commission within your boundaries where it overlaps the zoning districts where it applies. You can see the red line here. And then they apply really just for the planning board in those areas that are outside of your jurisdiction. And what's nice about it is that both the planning board and the commission are using the same guidelines for consistency that we think will matter. And again, this maybe has been adjusted since the last time that the full group saw it, but you can see what we've listed under building design regulations in the regulation category, building form, facade treatment, fenestration, frontage zones, what you see in parking design regulations, and then other issues in those same categories, which we've listed as guidelines, which gets into generally more design detail. And I think Tom and some of the other commissioners provided good feedback about moving some of those things around. I just wanted to recognize that. Just some examples of what's in the building regulations. In some cases in the document, you probably saw we made some diagrams that clarify some of the regulations, and/or we've used kind of photographs as examples, with photographs with a check being positive example and with an X being negative examples, just to help in your deliberations you understand the kind of intentions of some of these. So one of the things that we spent some time on is thinking about what to do to break down the building mass and facades at a finer grain than is required in the zoning. And so what we're requiring is that for facades that are longer than 50 feet, you have to make an architectural break of some kind. And so you can only have a single run of facade up to 50 feet. And we're showing just an example of how that might be done. And then we're discussing how, when you combine different roof forms or different massings together, that those should be offset at least 7 feet, so that it's not just superficial facade treatment. You're using moves in the massing itself to distinguish the components of the building. And that's because developers like to deliver very big buildings these days. And so it's a way to ensure that the scale of buildings in the historic district approximate the scale of older buildings in the downtown. That's the strategy for that. We also are, in terms of facade treatments, prohibiting certain materials. We've narrowed down the allowable colors to the colors that you see here, with some clarification based also on some good input about what are building body colors versus trim. There's more detail in the document itself. We've prohibited vinyl windows. Those are in the regulations. We've been restrictive about certain materials you can use for shop fronts and awnings. We've put all those things in the actual regulations. So if a developer or builder comes to you and says, I don't want to do that, you have to vote as a body and give them a waiver. Parking design regulations include requiring most of the parking being behind buildings and along the sides, as long as that parking lot isn't too big. There is a regulation that access to parking and loading needs to be off of secondary streets and not primary streets unless it's the only access. Very clear about that. There's vegetation and lighting regulations, and there's some language about where structured parking can go. But again, those are regulations. Parking design guidelines deal with landscaping issues that we thought should be a little bit more discretionary. Plant species, integration with stormwater treatment strategies, sometimes establishes the plant species you can use. But we've got examples, maybe not just nice, tidy mowed things, but maybe buffering that also serves another purpose to provide some stormwater management. Also in the guidelines, not the regulations, incentivizing high quality construction, talking about how to use different facades. And I think many of you who were on the field trip are don't do a false front on a gable-ended building photograph, which is nostalgic for me, because I think we all paused and looked at that when we were walking around. And then shop fronts, suggesting that you shouldn't use clear anodized aluminum, kind of off-the-shelf shop fronts, but be more sensitive about the design. And that, again, we thought should be discretionary, because different choices are made about the color of mullions relative to the branding strategy of whatever the tenant is, but being respectful of the kind of historical character of the street, And because there was a wide range of storefronts that people thought were generally good, we also thought that would be better as guidelines than regulations. So that's just an overview of the thinking behind them. I think the broad goal was to make the regulations and guidelines much more specific and much less open-ended than the guidelines you were using in the past, which tended to be much more qualitative and much more kind of adjective-based. And so we think this will give the commission good guidance about discussing projects with project proponents, and ensuring high-quality design. Did I miss anything, Jim?
No, I think that was a great overview. So, I mean, I know it's a thick document. Tonight we can certainly entertain some comments if you'd like, but also, as I mentioned, if the commission is comfortable with the document in its current form, we could certainly place it on for public comment. That could be another avenue, as you're sifting through this and you go, oh, I really was thinking we should have added this. You can certainly do that during that time frame as well. So we'll probably have a solid month out there that we want to try and give, the general public time to consume this and provide good comments.
Jim, one more comment. I think we've gotten good guidance from Jim and the town staff too, as they've reviewed new projects under the new zoning, a kind of facts on the ground when they're looking at those projects, and gotten good advice too about things they wanted in here because, not that the zoning fell short, but maybe didn't cover a finer grain issues. So we've gotten that through, I think, 3 or 4 substantial projects that have gone through the new zoning.
Right. Yes. So the early concepts have come forward, and I've sent them this and said, how does that interact with what your concepts look like? And they've offered some comments, and I think we've gotten a stronger document for that. But certainly interested in any comments you have tonight.
Apologize, I didn't introduce our staff in the beginning with this. So if the two of you would like to introduce yourselves, please, just so you have.
Karen Herron, Administrative Assistant, Planning and Development.
And Jim Kupfer, Senior Planner, Planning and Development.
Yeah, many apologies, that was rude of me. So that's done. I have a couple questions. Really, it's the same question. I know when I saw these slides before, there was a question about whether or not they're black and white trim and things like that. Now, the color schemes that are on there did not seem to have a white and a black.
I think in the new draft.
Right. So in the
it's been addressed.
Actually, the very final line of the new draft says, in addition to these colors, different shades of white can be used for the body of the buildings, trim and sash, and different shades of black can be used for shutters, windows, and doors. So that was something that we took into consideration.
And I think we referred to any of the whites or blacks on the historic colors, or we just leave that more open?
We left it more open, but we do refer in the guidelines to historic New England color chart.
Was this from the Nantucket palette that we got?
Yeah.
Any other commissioners have any questions?
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure, Commissioner Clark.
Actually, the last slide that you had up prior to the shop fronts was a great example. I'm looking at the frontage types, and I just kind of want to make sure. What is the term for what we see in the furthest left image and furthest right, where there's kind of an inlet here?
A recess?
A recess. So I don't see that represented here, and I wanted to make sure that it isn't allowed, because you call that a recess, but 9 months out of the year, people call that an apartment after 4:30 p.m.
Yeah, it's a good point, and maybe something we should address directly. We, by frontage zone, we meant from the face of the building to the back of sidewalk. You know, like I'm thinking of the Cafe Antoine's. Is that?
Yeah, Chez Antoine.
Yeah, that they have a private zone that seems to be an extension of the sidewalk. And because we allow a flexible setback dimension in a couple of the districts, we wanted to define that architects, developers, and builders had to be intentional about what that zone was. So we've established some choices that become a point of conversation about what would be appropriate based on the property. But you're right, we haven't addressed kind of overhang vestibules in buildings, and I think it would be allowed per the zoning and the design guidelines, because it's within that minimum maximum setback. So I don't know, Jim, how you think we should tackle that.
Yeah, that's a good call, though. I don't think we expressly state or prohibit that type of construction. And I think in some cases it might be okay, but I completely understand what you're saying.
I mean,
And
those two specifically
Right.
is what really, this was on my radar, but then you had pictures of actual area, and I realize maybe it's bigger than a planning issue. Maybe it's I don't want to overstep my purview, a policing issue, a community watch issue, whatever it may be, but yeah, those are essentially rented out for the winter months. And
Yeah, I think the challenge with buildings that are zero lot line, which means the buildings on the north side of Main Street for that run of blocks are zero lot line, which is they meet the public sidewalk, is that it's generally good practice to recess entries then so that you're a little bit undercover when it's raining or snowing or something. So in terms of traditional architectural design for shop fronts, usually the entries are pushed back, sometimes with a diagonal shop front window, so it's not a kind of boxed in rectangular space. But I think that we could maybe tackle that maybe in these guidelines. I don't think it's a bad idea, because if they're too tight and they're rectangular, maybe we set a minimum dimension for them so they're not 6 foot 8 inches long and to recess, so that there's good sight lines along the sidewalk. But I think it's a good point. It's important because it's more contemporary buildings that are a little bit mean about the dimension that's allowed. Usually more historical shop fronts have the windows running back at 45 degrees. It's a little bit more generous.
If I could, I'm sorry, I don't know if it, just, I like this being a guideline, because though I do understand what you're saying, I do think that whether someone is renting out that space really isn't our purview. That has to do with either community policing or policing itself. We're just worried about the design of the buildings. And though I do agree with you, I think it's a good idea maybe to have a certain setback, distance that we say it can't be more than however many feet from the frontage. I don't necessarily look at that and say, oh my God, that building just doesn't look historic because there's too much of an entryway there. So, I like it the way it is as a guideline. And then if someone brings it up to the commission, then we can discuss it there and talk a little bit about, our thoughts at that time. But I like it being general, so we can do it on a, case-by-case basis.
We might simply flag it so that you talk, instead of not mentioning it at all, we might put it in there and flag it so that with more intentionality, you can discuss it with a project proponent. Maybe that might it might be a middle ground, right? Not to have a hard and fast guideline, but be mindful for recessed entries, and maybe we have one diagram to explain some dimensions. I don't know. I think it might be a nice idea.
I see there's not a lot of regulations and guidelines on lighting.
We're going to leave it to you and this group to discuss it. The problem is that we had a discussion with Jim and my team about it, and it's the challenge is that there aren't common shared generic names for different kind of lights, because different lighting companies use different coach light, carriage light, and on the other hand, the choice would be to create a long list of acceptable specifications or lighting types. But the challenge with that is it's partly a resource issue, and partly that lighting lines only usually last for 3 or 4 years, and then they change the names and they change the serial numbers. So we think that by having language about appropriateness, it'll give this group an opportunity then to discuss it specifically, and we have an image in there to make it clear.
And And also, we did add some language for site considerations under, I think it's page 42, under section E, is talking about lighting and be context sensitive. But then we also added some language in 45 talking about more like public spaces. So provide adequate lighting to highlight the public space as a community focal point and to highlight special buildings and features throughout the day and evening. Consider seasonal lighting and provide adequate light levels to support pedestrian safety and security. And pathways at night, light levels and the direction of lighting should maximize safety, yet minimize light pollution in the surrounding neighborhood. I tried to add in a little bit extra there. So it's not just the private structures themselves, but considering themselves part of essentially a public space. You're on Main
Yeah.
Street. We're all kind of working together to make it a public space. So I try to add that in there so that you guys could perhaps point to that and say, could we do more? For instance, I talked to one potential developer about we require in our zoning street trees. And so I said, light those guys up if you can, bring it in and provide some nice decorative lighting that could provide some additional exposure on Main Street there. And we pointed to this, and they said, oh, not a problem.
Would that be the same with sidewalks also? Would that be?
Right. So especially if now with these zero lot lines for, so meaning the buildings right up to the sidewalk, a lot of these, the ask is going to be, hey, plant some street trees, so right in the sidewalks there. Ultimately, those get handed over to the town once it's established in the public right of way. But light those. I mean, it's ultimately up to this commission to determine whether you want to or not. But you can certainly make that recommendation, and now you got something to point to at least.
Okay. What about? I don't know if this would be in our old guidelines. It did mention that we frowned upon wall art. Are we doing anything in here about wall art?
I couldn't understand about what?
Wall art.
Oh, wall art. Okay. I thought you said war, and I was going to definitely prohibited.
Anti-war. Yeah, that's true.
Anti-war.
So we do talk not specifically about wall art, but designs in public spaces. So we added a section based on our conversations about general site and placemaking considerations. So that's page 42 to about 45. So take a look at that, and if you have any additional comments or additions there, let me know. We could certainly add that in there. This is more of a public space considerations as opposed to more, so this would be more of those that you see from the town or the library or something like that, as opposed to a developer coming in. Take a look at that section. You don't have to do it tonight, but
Lot to go through here.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
My goal is to put so much in here that I wear you down.
You did it.
It's some
win.
paperwork.
I would
Flag.
assume the regulations on the colors and what can be used and all that are hard and fast. Talking about the New England the color schemes and all that. And then yes, the stuff about the wall art and stuff are more like. More guidelines. Yeah. I like the fact that you reinforced it here today, the difference between the regulations and the guidelines, and I like that a lot because there should be hard and fast rules, regulations, but a lot of stuff, like, especially with signs and font on signs and all that. That's really a guideline thing. I mean, to a certain extent, the business owners should decide if they want a script or if they want print. We can give them our guidelines, our suggestions. But I like the fact that you have it, that in that two sections, though that way you can know it's really hard and fast and what we can discuss or talk about.
It might be how you structure discussions about projects too. It's like, let's talk about the regulations first. That's an agenda item. And then let's talk about the guidelines. It'll maybe help structure conversations in the way that proponents present.
Yeah.
The way I see it also is the regulations are what you have to do, but we also have existing buildings, and the guidelines allow us to work with people and applicants simply because you don't have to change it overnight. It's just for new materials, new buildings, and taking a wall down, and it gives flexibility with, or it takes away the rigidity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just a point of order, none of this is, everybody is grandfathered in who already has their
Right.
Yeah.
structures and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
the-
Gotcha.
Yeah, this is only for
Looking
when they
forward.
apply for something before you.
Gotcha. Okay.
What I would like to ask, though, is the colors. I mean, I totally, when you said you wanted to make them far less, I was, oh, yeah, I almost clapped. But we recently had an application without, since they're not here, that had a color that is definitely not in the color scheme. Now, let's say they wanted to repaint it. Barbie comes to mind, right? And I mean, I'm trying to say it without saying the applicant. But the thing is, if they wanted to redo it, I mean, it would be within our scope to say you have to repaint that left wall, but not the right wall, so that they match, even though it's not in the color scheme. Rather than redoing the whole.
I'll defer to the staff on that question.
So as of right now, as it stands, I mean, whatever's in existence, if they were to repaint exactly as they have it, they can repaint as they have it. Now, if they're going to say they didn't paint a wall and they say, I want to continue on with this color scheme, they need your approval first. And you could say, well, we've changed our color scheme, sorry. But that might be, it'll be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
for
that's the way I understood it. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. Because it's a tough economic climate out there, and we want to encourage business, so we don't want to make it harder for them, but we also have to keep the historic nature and character of the town and protect that.
So are you supporting Barbie pink? Is that what I hear? Is that what you're saying?
Until the hype is over.
Until the hype, yeah, exactly.
I was not the applicant.
And I think even regulations, the commission can grant a waiver.
Yeah, I know.
So.
Okay, that's the way I understood it. Commissioners, any?
I have a question on zero lot line when it's the front of the building. Are we allowed to have canopies projecting over the public way?
Yeah, potentially, depending on how, if you're in the public way, you need a license from the town. But yeah, you potentially could do that if granted.
Yeah, and I think there are canopies.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, there are.
There currently are.
But I
yeah.
didn't know if the new guideline stepped away from that.
No, I think we should allow it because I think maintaining the kind of historic alignment for those couple of blocks on Main Street,
Yeah.
if a new building came, would probably be the right thing to do.
Right, and this is honestly, this zoning is really kind of continuing what we've been doing for 120 years, just expanding it now to, East Main Street and the area there. So, because we've already gotten questions about, well, how are we going to maintain the sidewalk? And, well, we're going to maintain the sidewalk just as we maintain the sidewalk everywhere else that has zero setbacks. This isn't a novel, zoning act. It's continuing on history.
I thought a canopy might be a way to eliminate the entryways that are recessed.
Yeah.
And say if you want to protect the sidewalk or have people under cover to go through the door, you have to put a canopy and then not allow them at all.
I think you'll see in the guidelines that we're clear about the quality of awnings that you use and canopies.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And I think that some of that kind of softer approach for covering storefronts is nice too. But I don't think the zoning precludes doing hard canopies either in the public way, as long as it's a certain height. I can't remember what the dimensional requirements are. So I think that might be a discussion point for the commission when a project comes ahead of you, in front of you, whether what the proper solutions are. Because I do agree, and a lot of architects miss this, that it's important there's a little bit of a cover over a door when it's raining so you can open your umbrella. Too many buildings, and I learned that the historic Cape House just had a door without any transition. Tough people back then.
Some of them had no steps either.
Exactly.
You opened the door.
And it was like straight down.
Step down.
Exactly.
Okay.
But again, we are committed to remaining flexible as new ideas come in. So, I think Jim, the staff, and my team agreed that it made sense to make one last round of edits. Your feedback, whether you do it through the public process or send them directly to Jim, and we'll make the document as good as possible. And then after living with it for a year and a half, you might have to make some tweaks to it once you see where the language isn't clear or design features are coming in that we didn't anticipate. So, but I think Lauren and Andre and I think it's a good document. So
I think it is too. And by the way, you put a lot of hard work into it. Thank you for doing that with the town.
Yeah, great job.
yeah, it's been a fun process.
And we did solar lighting. Is there anything on solar lighting in here? Or
The solar is in there, but solar lighting, I don't believe is in there.
I'm not solar lighting, solar heating for the panels on.
Right, solar panels.
That's on there.
That's in there.
Another thing that this might be more zoning than for the guidelines, allowing storage units in the historic district.
Storage units are not allowed in the historic, storage units are not allowed in the harbor district, if that's what you're asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And aluminum siding.
Also,
Let's clarify that. That's self-storage, though, right?
correct, self-storage
Yeah.
is not allowed.
Not
in the
allowed.
harbor district. Thank you.
Or in any of these districts, is it?
Nowhere in downtown Hyannis
Right.
now.
Right.
Oh, that's on the new zoning, right?
Right.
No,
Yeah,
there's-
we expressly state self-storage is prohibited.
What
It is
about-
allowed out towards the industrial areas. and all
What
that.
about other types of storage?
We don't specify. For instance, we'll just say marina storage is allowed, but we don't specify other types of storage, which
Okay.
I don't know what other types of storage, but yes, that would, the blunt answer is that is zoning. Different uses, that's zoning.
Wow. Commissioners, anything else? Any other questions? So just to get, to clarify what the plan is, are you expecting us to give an approval from historic tonight, and then it goes on to go to the public?
Yeah, so not a formal adoption, but if the commission wouldn't mind a motion to recommend moving forward the draft design guidelines and regulations for public review, I think would be appreciated. And then that way I can provide confidence that both planning and historic has reviewed this. They're in favor of as it stands right now, with the understanding that it's being further reviewed by the public.
Okay, and
You can read this and
Oh, yeah.
make amends it to then the public and can make more.
Exactly right, for a solid month, and then I'll come back to this commission with those changes.
okay, so we do.
Congress passing a bill without reading it.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure that it comes back to us and we get to see the changes, like the black and the white and that last
Absolutely.
sentence on that page. And Commissioner Matthews, you have
Just a quick question. When it goes into public comment now, do we have to make comments through public comment, or can we just email you and say, here's a
You
note?
can just email me.
Okay.
We have the direct line.
Yeah.
All right, just making sure.
So in that case, I will happily make a recommendation for going forward, and so for this to be go forward for public review, and for it to then be those things to be implemented and then come back before us after we've had time to consider it as well.
I second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Matthews. I'll start on this side this time, just so I'm not having breakfast. Commissioner Kay.
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark. Aye. Commissioner Hinckley Needham.
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews.
Aye.
I also say aye. Thank you for all your hard work on putting that together and for putting up with us, because we have a couple experts, but we're.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for
This is
coming
great.
down
That's
to.
with Jim, huh?
You actually came down to the Cape today to present to us, I
Came
understand.
down yesterday for the One Cape conference, so
Oh, okay.
doing a little 2-day vacation in Hyannis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two beautiful days.
Too beautiful. It's always perfect here, right?
Well, why don't you come back when there's a northeaster?
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
evening. Okay, so that brings us back to Sophia Bailey. Oh, well, they're not here, so, and I take it they haven't texted you or anything, Jim, is that right?
No.
So I am going to make a motion that we continue that to our next one. They're within their time and everything, and is that right?
Yeah, they should.
Okay. So is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty? Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Kay? Commissioner Kay? Commissioner Hinckley Needham?
Aye.
I also say aye. So we're going to continue that. All right. So the minutes. June 21 draft minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read those? Everybody happy with them? Let me, was there any, Commissioner Matthews, were you at the June 21st meeting?
I was at that meeting, yes.
You were. Was anyone not there? Okay, okay. Also for the July 5th minutes, anyone not there?
I wasn't there.
And you were here or not here for the
June 21st, I was here.
Okay, so I just want to make sure he could, because if you weren't here and you haven't watched the tape, you shouldn't, because that's good. So, looks like everybody was here for both of those, right?
July 5th was our Zoom meeting, right? That was Zoom, right?
Yeah, that was Zoom.
Okay.
And you were here for the June 21st. Okay, so just want to, so I can, okay, so would, Commissioner, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the June 21st, 2023 minutes, please.
I'll move we approve that.
Second.
Commissioner Kay?
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Hinckley Needham?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
I also say aye. Would someone like to make a motion that we accept the July 5th, 2023 minutes?
I'll move that we accept them.
Second? Seconded by Commissioner Doherty. Which way did I start last time? Commissioner Kay?
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Hinckley Needham?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
I also say aye. And thank you very much for getting those done so well. Next meeting is going to be August 16th, and that will be in the Selectmen's conference room still? That's right. Okay. In that case, I don't think I missed anything. You were going to check on recess or something on there that Commissioner Clark brought up at some stage, or is that right? Nope. Okay, I guess we don't have to. All right. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion we adjourn?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Hinckley Needham?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Doherty?
Aye.
Oh, you already said.
Aye.
Commissioner Kay?
Aye.
I also say aye. We are adjourned.